So, because little is known about the film at this point, can you talk a little bit about the character you play in the film?
Sure. I play Roger Perrin. Lily Taylor and I are a couple. We have 5 daughters, and we've just moved to our dream house in Rhode Island. We're going to move out to the country. And since it's a James Wan film, things aren't happy and don't go perfectly. And we end up having to call in Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are played by Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, and they're the sort of true life renowned demonologists made famous by the Amityville horror case. So this is a case that actually happened years before the Amityville house, and it's kind of one of the things that sort of jump-started their career, and you see them kind of growing together as this kind of great, crazy, gothic, northeastern couple.
Sounds like audience is going to really love that.
It's a fun ride. It's a really fun ride. How are you?
Absolutely. And how familiar were you with James Wan's work before production began?
I saw Insidious and was kind of blown away. I thought he was doing, especially when I heard the budget on it, his art design is just really stellar, and his camera work is. You can tell he studied a lot of Hitchcock, and I think with this one he was doing a little bit of not a tribute, but I think he really wanted to pull back in some of that old, visual kind of Hitchcock sensibility, and then combine that with the the modern day sort of pace and punch, and he did a great job. The movie I saw a cut of it last week, and it's plays great. It just it's scary. My wife was with me and almost had to walk out of the room, before it was over, and I'm excited for it.
Great. And this film is quite a departure from your usual work. What made you want to kind of do something a little bit different and venture into the horror genre?
I've done a couple of. What I did is I don't think many people saw it, but I did a Stuart Gordon film called King of the Ants that was really, really dark. It's a little really dark. But I was excited. I was mostly for the people in it. I saw Insidious and I was like, oh, this director just shoots beautiful movies. You know what I mean? And it's got a great sense of pace and timing. Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, Lily Taylor, right there. I was like, well, Lily Taylor's my wife. She's one of America's great actresses. So I went right to that.
Well, thanks so much. Thank you for your time. Great to meet you.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you.
You too. What made you want to work with James Wan again on this film?
I kept thinking if I was going to dip into the horror well again, it better be with somebody that I trust, and I don't, trust anyone more in this genre certainly than James. And I knew that it was a different. Yes, it's a horror movie and it's scary, and it'll have, James knows the types of movies that he wants to make, and he has his own sort of flavor and tone that he puts into them. But story is, aside from that, the story completely different. The character was completely different than anything I'd done before, so I knew it'd be a new challenge for me, and playing someone real that was in this community one of the most revered, both Ed and Lorraine Warren were the most revered paranormal investigators really in history. They're sort of credited with starting it all. So I knew it was going to be an interesting take for me as an actor, but I also knew that James we just have a lot of fun together, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. And what type of research did you do? Did you consult with any real-life demonologists before filming began?
We talked to Lorraine Warren. Ed passed away a few years ago, but Vera Farmiga and I drove up to Lorraine's house, sat with her and a priest, and looked at photos and paintings, and just sort of talked to her about what their relationship was like, we talked about a lot of things, but that was one of the things that I did. And I also watched a lot of videos of him, and they gave me some audio recordings that he had done, sort of hearing how he would respond to questions and his very direct manner. And he's a very strong, big guy, and he had a very fun side too. So for me, it was I wanted to just know as much as I could about him, and read a book that he had written. So.
Wonderful. And this film is based on a real case that happened in the 70s. What do you think is so compelling about it that makes it just ripe for film adaptation?
Well, I mean, it's hard. You never want to trivialize anyone's real pain. But this was, but the parent. They also wrote. One of the daughters also wrote a book about it as well. I mean, I think the fact that it for them, anytime you see haunted house movies, and then you see one that's based on a real story, you just go, wait a second. I mean, this kind of stuff really happens, and if you're on board for that, and if you believe in it, and these people, they went through it, and they absolutely believe in it 100%. So of course it's compelling, because life is stranger than fiction. I mean, it is. So it's it was a very tragic story, and they worked very hard to sort of get themselves back to a very sane place.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, and congrats on the film.
Thank you.
A lot of people are familiar with the Amityville story that took place in the 70s. Very few people are familiar with the Harrisville story. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that's because they wrote a news article that became a book and then eventually became a very famous film. So I think that really helped with the popularity with Amityville. The irony here is the Amityville story film was actually based on the investigation that Ed and Lorraine Warren did. And so The Conjuring is basically a movie that is based on the life of Ed and Lorraine Warren. They have said that in their lifetime, they've investigated close to 10,000 cases. Now, not all of them are spooky stuff, because they go to houses where nothing happens, and they'll tell the family no, you don't have a ghost here, you just have a broken radiator, a broken window or something. And so, but in amongst all of that, there's stuff that are really spooky and that they couldn't really explain. And the Harrisville story is one of them. And so, I think when the writers first worked on this, they asked Lorraine, because Ed has already passed on, Lorraine, who's now, I think, in her 80s, and they asked her, which was the story that had the biggest impact on you guys, when you did all this investigation back then? And for Lorraine, the biggest one was this particular story that we chose for The Conjuring, and that's why we picked it.
And was Lorraine involved in helping you research for the film and prepare?
Lorraine was definitely involved in, helping us, research. We would constantly pick her brains on, what she did, and we would even pull inspiration from her other cases. And so even though some of the scares in the movie may not necessarily be from this story, but we tried to keep everything still from within her world, what she believed in, and I think that that helps to keep the film grounded and make it feel more real, to who they are.
Now, the film has an interesting cast that includes Ron Livingston, Lily Taylor, a lot of actors who are known for more indie work. What went into assembling the cast beforehand?
Well, I think that's partly because I'm from the indie world myself. I'm in the indie world making this studio film, so very much my spirit in how I make films is still very much in that indie spirit. And I just want really great actors. I want great actors that people recognize, but don't necessarily take away from the film. And so that really helps. Having them in the movies is fantastic, because they bring so much. They bring a sense of reality to the film that was what I really were looking for.
Wonderful, thanks so much. And I'm sure fans want to know, what can you tell us about Insidious 2, if anything?
Insidious 2, it's in the pipeline right now.
Fair enough. Thanks so much. Great to meet you.